I'm Danny Kelly, host of the Ringer Fantasy Football Show, and from now until the draft, we are turning our feed into the Ringer NFL Draft Show to talk all things draft with me, Danny Heifetz, Ben Solak, and Craig Horlbeck. Check us out on Tuesdays and Thursdays and search the Ringer NFL Draft Show.
This episode is brought to you by Anytime Fitness. We may talk a whole lot about sports, but when it comes to keeping fit ourselves, there's definitely room for improvement. I hit this point early July. I was just like, I am not in good enough shape. I started trying to walk at least 15,000 steps a day or hiking or just anything to keep my legs moving. Now it's the end of 2023. I feel great. I had a physical 3 weeks ago and the guy was like, you're doing great. You're doing better than you were 3 years ago. I felt great. Whatever your goals are, progress is possible thanks to Anytime Fitness. Get a personalized plan and support from an expert coach anytime, anywhere. Visit anytimefitness.com to try Anytime Fitness for free. Start to train for your life. Terms, conditions, and restrictions apply. See website for details.
Welcome back to another episode of the Ringers NBA Draft Show. My name is Kevin O'Connor, and joining me, as always, is the Ringers J. Kyle Mann. What's going on, man? How you doing today?
Doing great, doing wonderful, doing fantastic. How are you doing, Kev? You looking healthy, looking fresh, rearing, ready to go?
I mean, I'm feeling okay. I woke up with a little bit of an itchy throat this morning, so I am hoping it's just, I don't know, bad sleep or whatever, and not turning into sickness. But I suppose better to get a little head cold the opening, round of the playoffs instead of during the conference finals or finals. That's the hope. But overall, I hope I'm healthy. Today on the draft show, we're going to be discussing the departures of Don Lemon from CNN and Tucker Carlson from Fox News. Kyle, where would you like to start?
Good riddance, right? I mean, I think this, sometimes a door opens and a pathway opens for you. So I'm going to, to quote Tom from Succession, I would throw my hat in the ring. I would say, I think I'm cut out for this type of job. No experience in politics, but I think that, and I have no political opinions really. So other than a few here and there. So
should the charge be removed? That's our political opinions, right?
Yeah, episode
Get
1.
rid of the charge and block.
We're taking your calls. Let's get into it. No,
really, today we're going to be talking about. You teased it on Twitter last week. You tweeted out, "Me and KOC are going to be talking about James Nnaji next week on the draft show because James Nnaji, who is an 18-year-old, 6'10", 7'5" wingspan." Who plays for Barcelona, he is, in your opinion, one of the real gems in the draft hiding in plain sight. And currently I have him on the public draft guide rankings. I have him at 32. A lot of publications have him in the 20s at this moment. But just to kind of give like a brief, a summary of who he is in the draft guide, I have him as a long-armed big man who's built like a tank and has the mentality to dominate on both ends of the paint. This season for Barcelona, he's averaging 9 minutes over nearly 40 games in the EuroLeague, Spanish League, Cup play. So he's not playing a lot. That's a deep Barcelona team, and he's only a teenager, so a lot of those guys don't get minutes. I say he's 6'10", 7'5". He's also measured previously with a 7'7" wingspan. He's about 225 pounds. We'll get those measurements come draft lottery time. Maybe a Robert Williams type of body athlete. But Kyle, what are you seeing in the playoffs right now, or what have you seen in the regular season with the state of the game to make you feel that a James Nnaji is somebody who can plug into an NBA team and offer significant skills that impact winning?
Well, let's talk about the body first. I mean, you mentioned, 6'9", 6'10". We don't know exactly like the wingspan. It's been floating around. It's gone up. It's gone down. If it's as big as 7'7" and he's standing at any way that this comes out, he's going to have a crazy plus wingspan, really long arms. You mentioned Robert Williams. He's Nigerian also, I'd add. August 14th, 2004 is his birthday. I think that he's got sort of a Bam Adebayo, Onyeka Okongwu type body in that he has good size, crazy wingspan, really strong forearms, wrists, hands. The big thing is hip mobility. That is like a quality among big guys. I tweeted some clips. There are a lot more clips that I could tweet out of him meeting ball handlers at the level, shuttling with them, like mirroring their drives all the way to the rim. And the big thing I wrote down: strength to repel. He has that like core strength that you see that Onyeka Okongwu and Bam both have. Maybe even a little Jalen Duren is another one that I've heard people throw out there. Then he has the mobility to contain those, even with like. I think the body is the biggest thing first. I think if you look at the guys like Bam, if you look at the guys like Okongwu, they can play multiple defensive styles in the playoffs. I think that he has just a really impressive physical sort of template to start with. And I think that he could play with those long arms. He can play up and guard bigger guys. He can shuttle. I think that he is just crazy defensive upside, KOC.
So in other words, like, you see all these different bigs right now in the NBA playoffs playing different schemes. You see some drop coverage. You see Jaren Jackson. Sometimes he's playing drop. Sometimes he's off ball roaming. You see guys like Sabonis. Granted, he's not a defensive player, but I'm talking scheme-wise. He needs to come out high on those handoffs and pick and rolls that you see the Warriors run with Stephen Curry all the time. He needs to be out on the perimeter. You see, all Robert Williams playing next to Al Horford. You see Evan Mobley doing what he does for Cleveland. You think Nnaji is the type of guy that can plug into any of those types of roles? Like, he just has like 90th plus percentile defensive versatility. It's a big man.
Yes. He's somebody that I don't even know why you would drop. And the thing that kind of launched me into thinking about, you kind of like over the course of the year, you look at individual players, you go through and try to familiarize yourself with them. That's over the course of even more than a calendar year. It's a process that takes a while. Sometimes I usually use the summers to kind of become familiar with guys, and then you sharpen it as you see them play at higher levels. But like, Nnaji is a guy that's, you and I were like, I think the thing that like spawned it was I was like, I need to kind of look at these big guys in a group. And I was like, who is the most comparable to the way that Jaren Jackson is playing defense right now? I don't think his offensive upside is the thing that separates him from a Jaren Jackson, and we can get into that. That's a whole different category. But he's probably most like a Okongwu, I would say, in that sense, in terms of his limitations and what he'll be going forward. But I just think that he's going to be really switchable at the next level because he has really good hands. And you mentioned it, like, he plays on a team in FC Barcelona who is in the EuroLeague, who is on. It's a really talent heavy team for this type of team. Satoransky's on there. You've even got Nikola Mirotic, who was a great NBA player. Alex Abrinas, Jokubaitis. I always mess up his last name, but he was a guy who was on the draft radar fairly recently. Jan Vesely, another legend of NBA draft. But this is a team, he's not getting a lot of minutes on there. And I don't think it's because it's a team that's competitive and trying to win. It's a totally different situation than like Metro 92, where they're just like, we're just going to let the young guys out there and show them the open road and go play. Like, his minutes are pretty. Jukevicius is their coach. And he's, the Lithuanian guy. And he's been kind of like, he gets in for like anywhere between like 9 and 13 minutes a pop. But when he's in there, man, he makes crazy plays. There was a sequence I tweeted out this morning where, he was out of position. Got a big block, goes down and gets a big, he catches the ball off the glass and dunks over Walter Tavares. He just has this wild, unbridled energy on the defensive end, but he's young, so he's going to probably be a project. Like, it's going to take a little while, but his first NBA game he plays, he's going to be 19 years old. So I think he's going to be a good investment for somebody.
I'm 100% with you on his defense. I mean, I think there's no doubt about what he can be. He has the toughness. He has the strength, battling some, bigger guys. Granted, he's big himself, but wider, stronger, 7+ feet. He can handle post-ups. He can play any defensive style and pick and roll coverage. He hustles. He plays hard. Like, there's like little more that you could ask for from a prospect at almost 19 years old later this year, like you said. offensively, you mentioned in passing there, Kyle, some of his upside. There's no doubt, like, as a baseline, the type of players we're talking about here, like, you can kind of get the idea. We mentioned Robert Williams, Bam Adebayo, the type of flavor of big. He maybe some playmaking, maybe some lob finishing. With Nnaji, it's more so, currently the lob finishing, screen and roll, finish loud at the basket. He's somebody who sets pretty good screens for his age. He has pretty good hands. He can finish lobs. He's athletic. He's tough. I mean, I like his movement even when he's not setting a ball screen and making himself available and open for some cuts to the basket. He does a very good job at that. He has feel, pump fakes, little shoulder movement to get himself space. I like all of those things. But you mentioned in passing the upside on offense. What more do you see from him, as a potential upside player on the offensive end?
Well, I mean, the upside, it's going to be a long road for him to become. I mean, the big sort of like chasm for him to cross will be like, can he become a self-creator? And how confident are you in that? Because, you line up all the other sort of bigs that are in the discussion for this class, and you got Derek Lively, and you got Adimbona, and Deron Holmes, and Noah Clowney, and you kind of just weigh all those guys against each other, and it's like he's not. I don't think his potential is the same as like a Lively or a Bona or a Clowney. Even we'll just exclude Wembanyama from this conversation because he's a different thing entirely, but. I think he's got a long way to go in terms of that. I think he's probably more likely to hover in that sort of DeAndre Jordan mold, the run, catch lobs, set screens, maybe make simple passes, things like that. I don't think you're ever going to rely on him. I think you're probably going to be keeping him on the floor as like an accessory rather than like a main focal point for your offense, because he's not much of a free throw shooter. He's pretty turnover prone around the basket. His left hand is pretty rough. I mean, he's very raw offensively, but I think I don't know where do you see his offensive upside? Do you see him ever becoming a self-creator, or how skeptical are you?
I mean, you see the moments like he can straight line drive a bit. Yeah, even with Bam Adebayo, I'm surprised Bam has reached the level that he has. When you look at him at Kentucky versus what he is now from Miami, that was shocking to me. Like, I just didn't see that in Bam, but I think with Bam, maybe you had to look back more at his high school stuff and really project ahead. Like, his improvement is impressive. With Nnaji, maybe there's something in there with that handling ability. But if you're having him handling the ball, granted, Bam Adebayo has not shown himself to be a perimeter shooter, and it's okay. He has become an effective offensive player without that. With Nnaji, he is a sub 50% free throw shooter. He's not even like in the class of Robert Williams, 66%, or Jalen Duren, 61%. So, and Bam Adebayo, even better than those guys. If Nnaji is being asked to create more, he's going to at least need to improve, above that 60% threshold as a free throw shooter. Otherwise, it's like, hack this dude and put him at the line. When he's shooting 44% from the free throw line, past season, he shot below 40%. That's where I have my concerns with him. You mentioned some of the avoidable mistakes that he makes as a playmaker, some of the sloppiness, needs to improve his offhand. But the free throw shooting, that feels like a big one to me. If that doesn't improve there.
Yeah, I mean, even Okongwu during his freshman season at USC, he was a 72% free throw shooter, so and could pass the ball, and that's kind of the differentiator. If you wanted to, I mean, I'm being generous by like lumping him with those guys. I think offensive feel, Bam and Okongwu are definitely ahead of him in terms of like being passers and their feel, but playing in the EuroLeague is good experience, and whenever he's out there, you kind of look for that energy that needs to be like directed and kind of crafted and molded in a way. Like, he has a rawness to him that is a little different than those guys. Like, I think it's going to take some time. And whenever you're trying to kind of pair him with a team, I think that's a discussion that we could have. But he's very disruptive, even despite, like, I was watching some of his technique. his positioning, like on like whenever they were switching a pick and roll, he'd be kind of out of position in a way and still make a play on the ball in a way that makes me think like if somebody really works with this guy, he seems like he's like perceiving the game in real time at a decent, I'm not seeing like latency that's worrisome. His motor's good. And if you fix some of those things, I think that he could be a pretty impactful defensive player. Like, I guess the question just starts to become, where do you value him and in relation to these other bigs in this class? And like, how high is too high? That's kind of the question that I've been having, asking myself lately.
Where do you have him currently ranked? I mean, even if it's more of a range, is he lottery, mid-first? Does it depend on the team and their philosophy?
It could depend on the team who is drafting in that range, but like,
is there a team you would want him on in the lottery? I mean, like is there, just like listing the top, 10 to 15, Dallas 10, Orlando 11, OKC 12, Toronto 13, New Orleans 14, Atlanta 15. Is there any of those teams where you'd be like, man, Nnaji would be a really great pick there, A+ draft night lottery grade?
Yeah, I mean, Dallas needs somebody like this. Dallas needs an athlete like this on the interior, I think. But the timelines kind of have to match up because if you think about the way he was playing sparingly, a team that was competing in the EuroLeague. And also, speaking of Dallas, speaking of the EuroLeague, whenever you watch some of these guys that are 18 years old in the EuroLeague, it just like hammers home the point again of how like silly it was that people discounted what Luka did in the EuroLeague.
Yeah.
Like, come on, man. And it just makes it even more.
It's the second best league in the world.
Yeah. These are grown men who know how to play, and like a lot of things from like tell me if you agree or disagree with this. That like a lot of the time, from level to level, it's less about the skill level and just more about the vehicles that the skill level is in. Like the skill is in. Like a lot of the guys there are great shooters in the EuroLeague. They're great like tactically intelligent players in the EuroLeague. They're just not the same level of athlete. And you'll see like lower mid-major players, they're just smaller. They have the same kind of skill set. They're just different bodies. The bodies are the thing that differentiates, it seems like to me.
Sure. No, I think that's accurate there. Is there a team in the late lottery though? Like, I'm just curious. Like, because with Dallas,
you're right.
I think you hit it on the head there, Kyle. This is the tough part. Dallas, can they expect a guy going from playing 9 minutes per game to 35 minutes in the Western Conference Finals? Probably not. I mean, Orlando, they got bigs. OKC, that's interesting. Next to Chet, that's intriguing there. Like more than Derek Lively, though, more than some of the other options that could be on the table for them. That comes down to which prospect do you prefer?
Defensively, I don't have the same like weird queasiness in my stomach that I have about Lively. Like I don't have that for Nnaji. Like I really
what is it about Lively? Just to compare the two, like what is the something that gives you that queasy feeling? Something missing? Is it feel? What is it?
He's disruptive. I just think that, like, in terms of like containing ball pressure, I think that Nnaji could be really incredible. Like, I think his hip mobility, like, if you watch him move with smaller players, it's exceptional. Like, I really think it's special, and I think that Lively has some of that, but you see it like Lively kind of cleaning things up. I just don't see the same motor, and I don't see the same like inconsistency that I see in Lively in Nnaji. In terms of teams, no, you're right to hold my feet to the fire here. If it had been like 2018 or something, and he was like on a younger timeline with Luka, maybe, but they just have too much pressure. Houston is interesting to me. If you thought about, I guess some of this could be contingent on Şengün is so important. They got
the 20th pick here, just 20th, something like that, or maybe a move up. They could consolidate picks.
They could. Yeah, they have the 2 picks. I guess that one is from the Clippers, their second pick. Yeah, you could convince me to bring him as high as like 10 to 14 range. Like really, like maybe even 9. Like I really think that. And this is one of those situations where I have a hunch and I usually don't go far enough. I kind of did that with Jalen Williams last year. Am I crazy? I don't know. I just feel like this skill set is the thing that is like really valuable aside from like playmaking and shooting. I just think that like this defensive skill set is special. I mean, another one is Charlotte, but Charlotte has a lot of cakes baking in the oven right now in terms of big guys. If you think about, Mark Williams and, Kai Jones and even Nick Richards, who's older, but I mean, he's a younger big guy they have on their roster. I don't know that they're going to take another offensively challenged big guy. OKC is interesting. Is there one that you like? I mean, I've rattled off a few here, but is there one that you think makes sense?
OKC is the main one. I think for, in the mid first range, probably a little too young and raw for Golden State, but I'd be very intrigued to see it. Like, I think the Warriors, they whiffed on James Wiseman, but the idea of drafting a big made sense. So I'd like to see them take a shot on somebody at some point, whether it's through trade or draft, bring in another big man. I'd be intrigued by them investing in Nnaji there. How do you like him next to Bam with Miami? Is that not enough shooting, not enough spacing on offense, but the defensive versatility? He'd provide another body next to Bam. You could have Cleveland style Allen Mobley, but we've seen in the playoffs how that has revealed some weaknesses, the importance of surrounding those two guys with shooting. You get the Knicks helping off those guys, clogging driving lanes, making things tougher for Mitchell and Garland. There's risk in playing that way, but just thinking aloud here through it, having Bam and Nnaji would be kind of wild on defense.
It'd be interesting on defense. Yeah. On offense, I think it could come back to bite you.
I agree.
Let's look at some of the alignment here that Bam has played with this season. I was going to try to pull that up really quickly. I mean, the majority of his minutes, it looks like, he's at the 5 the vast majority of the time, and understandably so. I mean, I don't know really. I mean, they've done some Kevin Love stuff. I don't know. I don't really know that Bam has ever truly played consistently next to another big, like a true big in Miami, has he?
No,
I mean,
he
a lot of the
hasn't,
times
no.
it's Jimmy. Yeah.
How about Portland? That's a good fit, with or without Dame.
It'd be like a forward-thinking move. It'd be a forward-facing move, I would assume. You assume that the next sort of. I mean, we've talked about what Portland's going to do in the future with the Simons and the Shaden thing. Somebody that is I think you would need to have a 5 that was really, truly positionally rock solid next to those two guys defensively, don't you think? And he's somebody that can catch lobs. That's the main thing too about the OKC pairing that I think is interesting. Is that's one thing he can do. He's similar to sort of the Mitchell Robinson thing, in that he's going to be all over the place. He's got that just terrier energy of just he never stops. So, and he's going to catch lobs. I think that makes sense next to those two guys. That'd be sort of a post Nurkic thing. You could you bank, as you move forward. But does that line up for them where they're going to be picking? It's, they're probably going to have a pick in the mid-20s there from the Knicks. I don't know.
Number 23.
Yeah, I could see that one too. Is there a big that's a better fit for them, though, would be a question. Would you rather have the offensive upside of one of these other guys, like a Clowney or a Lively?
I mean, here's the thing, though. What is that team even going to look like? Does that factor into the equation here? If you're Portland, does it matter if you have Dame or not with the decision there? How do you want to build this roster out? And with Portland, it's going to be very interesting to see, with them, what options they'll have this offseason. There's got to be a team out there that says, I mean, we already have Dame flirting with the Nets, sitting courtside. Him and Bridges have known each other a long time. They're close. You got Sean Marks being asked by Nets media with his exit interview, do you plan on using those picks for a big trade? Wink, wink. And he's like, well, we're not in a rush to do anything. We could play it slow here. But Damian Lillard, despite his age, surrounded by Mikal Bridges and all the length and versatility that they have on that Nets team. Dorian Finney-Smith, Cam Johnson, Royce O'Neal, up and down the roster. You got Nick Claxton, one of the best switch defenders in the big man position in the entire league. I mean, suddenly that roster gets pretty interesting with Damian Lillard, with that supporting cast. Add one more guy, too. Maybe a couple more additions in free agency. I'm intrigued there. And for Portland, you could get, Phoenix's entire future.
Yeah.
And Phoenix, who knows, man? They could win. They could go to the Western Conference Finals, the finals this year. But KD at his age, Chris Paul on the decline, they could fall off at some point.
Yeah, we're making all these bets on these guys that are close to that like desert of inconsistency. We're seeing it more and more with Chris Paul, and the Chris Paul dialogue has like encapsulated what it is. Kyle Lowry was this way last year, where it was like, and I've said this before, people were like, man, I just can't get a feel for it. It's like, oh, he was bad, that he was horrible this night, and then he looked like himself. And it's just like, as you age, that's the thing that goes, is that consistency. You're going to have it some nights and you're not. And then I get a little queasy, like, trading my future for somebody for a short term. But this is what these franchises are after. I guess it's better to get a little short-term burst of success where you taste the very top than never get it at all. Would you rather be sort of hovering in that competitive zone for a longer amount of time, or would you rather get like a couple years? Like, of course, the Raptors have been good, but they reached the top. I think if you ask Raptors fans, they pretty unanimously would say it was worth it. So if I was thinking about that, for me, though, with like the Blazers, I'm not running the Blazers. I'm not a Blazers fan, but whenever I think about them, I'm thinking about Dame in the equation. I just feel like he's a nice asset, like you were saying, that we could maybe bolster this next move. But Nnaji, I think, I'm a fan. He's really active on the glass. He's huge. I don't know. I'm trying to like find ways to talk myself down so that I don't go too far. I think he could be a hard shower. I think he could be a switcher. I think he's mobile enough to be a really effective ice defender in pick and roll.
Very nice.
Yeah.
You're talking yourself up. I'm trying to talk myself down. I'm talking myself up as you say that.
Yeah. I love his gait. I love the way he runs. I mean, I don't know. I could see myself keeping him in that 10 to 14, 15 range, which I feel like is a little higher. I've talked to a few people who are up on him that kind of agree, but I just like him better than these other bigs, man. I don't know. There's something about there's MFer in him that I like.
Kyle, for next week's draft show, do we want to discuss the lessons learned from our biggest mistakes in draft history, or our biggest victories, our biggest hits that we've had? We're going to do both before the draft, but which one do we want to do next week?
People want to hear us eat shit, Kev. Let's be honest. You know that. I mean, that's way more interesting.
So biggest mistakes next week? Yeah. Okay, we'll leave the show with Killian Hayes.
Yeah, people want to hear us own our failures.
Okay, we'll talk about our biggest mistakes first, and then we'll scratch our own backs a future week.
Let's do it. Same old mistakes. The Tame Impala song. That'll be our theme song for that one.
New person, same old mistakes, right?
We try to learn.
Oh, Kyle, when's Tame Impala going on tour again? Hopefully soon. I gotta see them again. You see them live yet, Kyle? I think you.
Yeah,
have,
I told you. I told you on the show. I saw them in that little room randomly.
Yeah, well, that's true. Yeah. You did. I forget.
You've established that. You forget.
Well, thank you for listening to another episode of the Ringers NBA Draft Show. Please subscribe if you haven't yet. Thank you to Jessie Lopez for producing us, and thank you to you for listening.
The SpongeBob thing, like, I just missed it. Like, it was like I was aware of it and I laughed at it, like, whenever it crossed me. But like, people who like were right in that generation, I feel like it's like people like 4 or 5 years, maybe even 6, 7, 8, that range younger than me, like really love SpongeBob, like in a way that is a little different than me. But like,
how
I don't
old
know.
Are you?
37.
Yeah, I can see why. Like that, I am 32, so that 5-year difference, it's like just missed it. You might have seen clips.
Like Kevin Durant was tweeting about like SpongeBob. There's just like, you'll just see people of a certain age like really freak out about, like, I know Kyrie had like the SpongeBob shoes.
Durant's
and stuff.
34.
I'm like, I like it. It just wasn't.
And Kyrie must be 31, something like that. 31 for Kyrie. So yeah, like that's more like the range. KD was probably like the last year for SpongeBob.
I just grew up without cable, so I completely just missed SpongeBob.
Oh God, Jesse.
Me too, man. Me too. I grew up without cable. My parents wouldn't do it. And I grew up during the music video generation. So there's so many cultural important things that I just was always playing catch up, man. Yeah. My friends would be like, they'd be talking about WWF and talking about music videos. And I'd be like pretending,
it was so cool. It rocked. Never saw it.
Can you imagine all the references you'd have dancing around in your brain right now, Kyle, if you did have all that information when you were that young?
I think it made me weirder. I've often thought that because I grew up in the middle of nowhere. Kevin, if you're ever for some reason out here, I would love to just show you where I grew up. It is like seriously the middle of nowhere, like a river bottom valley. We had no cable. We had internet when I would turn like 13. But no, I think it made me weirder because I spent a lot of time alone without these things, just playing around. And
Did you
I
read
don't
books?
know.
What did you do? Books? Like comics? Or
I was a big reader. Goosebumps, man.
Goosebumps was
all
cool.
about- Did
I
you?
used to read
Nice.
Goosebumps. Yeah. You too,
I was gonna
Jesse?
say that might be
No,
the
I
reverse
read
of what we're.
Goosebumps. I didn't read a whole lot, but Goosebumps was definitely one of the few stuff I did read.
Goosebumps was cool. I used to like
Yeah.
Goosebumps. I don't remember any of the stories, but if I saw the cover, I'd be like, oh yeah, I used to like that one or that one.
I would inhale those, man. I mean, I'd read them sometimes like in a day.
Oh
I'd
yeah,
read like
those,
a whole one.
those were like what? Like I don't know.
Maybe like 80 pages at the
yeah,
most.
they were like breezy reads, super fun. Night of the Living Dummy.
That's the most
Just
popular one.
Pulling up. Remember the Blob.
Monster Blood, You Can't Scare Me, Bad Hair Day, Beast from the East. There's a bunch. Tower of Terror. There were plenty of good ones. Day at Horrorland.
DazedDigital.com. A definitive ranking of all 62 original Goosebumps books.
What's number one? What do they have number
scrolling
one?
down right now. Let's see. Number one, The Haunted Mask. Oh, that's a good one.
Send me the
I
list.
remember that one.
So hold on. Send me the list.
The Haunted Mask.
I want to see this.
One
yeah,
Day
that was
at
a good
Horrorland. I don't remember that. The Girl Who Cried Monster.
I remember the TV show, the episode of that one, not the book.
Say Cheese and Die. I remember that one.
I remember that one. That was the one
Good
that
one.
with Ryan Gosling in the TV show.
Yeah, the TV show, they used to sit around a campfire, right?
No, that's whatchamacallit.
What show is that?
No, it's shit. God, it's
I know. I'm looking it up.
Tales to Tell in the Dark or whatever it is. Or,
Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
That
I
one.
used to
Afraid of the
love
Dark.
that show.
I submit there were some episodes of that show that like scared the shit out of me when I was like a little kid. I remember there was one with like a clown. There was one
So
like,
you
where
had-
like a
you had Nickelodeon
Nosferatu
to
type
watch that?
thing. Well, I would.
Like, over
that was the
friend's
thing. I would
house.
sneak little. My grandmother had it, and whenever we would be at her house, it was just my sister and I would fight over who got to watch. I wanted to watch Nickelodeon. Yeah, the Living Dummy. Let's see. Stay Out of the Basement. Yeah. Monster Blood was one of my favorites. My wife has strong takes on these two. She was
Monster Blood?
a big fan. Yes, Monster
Okay.
Blood.
I was just typing. I guess that's the way I talk when I type Monster Blood. Okay, there's multiple Monster Bloods.
Oh,
Yeah,
it was a
I
big series.
I remember
Kev.
that
It was a
cover.
big deal. People still talking about it.
Yeah, I don't
Yeah.
remember anything in the books or much of anything at all. Anyway,
You make that clear
I
every
just don't.
episode.
I just don't remember movies, books, TVs. It's like if I
Your mind just doesn't retain information
No,
that way.
Yeah, my recall is broken. It just always has been. I think like you could ask me when I was like 9 years old reading Goosebumps. A week later, what was it about? I would have forgotten then too.
The internet really reset my brain though in this way. Like, cause I remember I was like just a crazy voracious reader. And then once we got the internet, I was just like, okay, that's over. I'm moving on. Next thing.
Something better. To each their own though. I
Yeah.
mean, I envy those people who are big readers. I wish I could be a big reader.
Same.
I really do.
I'm not the biggest reader.
What's the last thing you read? I read Mir and Fader's book on Giannis. I might have read something or two things since then. I don't remember what they were, but I remember reading that. I remember my coworkers' stuff.
Yeah. Let's see. The last thing that I actually finished, it took me a while, but I kind of worked my way through Meet Me in the Bathroom, that like oral history of like rock and New York in the early 2000s. I kind of slowly got through that one. Ooh, I don't know, man. There's a really cool book called The Man Who Heard Voices. It's about M. Night Shyamalan trying to make Lady in the Water. That's an interesting book. The struggle. The studio was like, hey, this sucks. And he was like, no, it doesn't suck. And they go back and forth and fight a lot. Spoiler alert, it sucks. But it's an interesting book.
I got to see. I didn't see Knock at the Cabin yet. That was good, supposedly. I've heard.
It is? I hadn't heard that it was good, but I hadn't heard either way.
How about Split? I like Split. I'm just scrolling down his The Village,
I don't think I watched that one.
Signs.
The Village was a trip.
I mean,
Signs my favorite.
Obviously,
I
The
think.
Sixth Sense.
Split was surprisingly
I like
good.
Split.
Yeah,
Yeah.
like I remember, but they probably, I think he got a little excited and when he went ahead and like crossed over actually, Unbreakable might be my favorite movie of his.
Is that the Mr. Glass one
Shyamalan.
starring Anthony Davis?
Yeah,
or?
Bruce Willis. Yeah, that one.
Starring Anthony Davis.
That's what he said.
Touche. That was a good one.
I just realized.
See, and look at that. You pull that out of your hat like nothing.
See, I know I can do it sometimes. Only basketball related. Sometimes I like responding to serious tweets, like just assuming it's about basketball. Like there was this one earlier on Twitter this morning. Someone just said, "It's over." And it has nothing I don't know what it has to do. It's something that probably to do with the stock market or politics or whatever. And I just responded saying, I disagree. I think the Bucks have a chance to come back from down 3-1. This is what I used to do with like the Elon stuff. When Elon would tweet about Rockets, and I just respond with like basketball questions. But that got me in trouble though, because people think I'm like, standing him. It's like, no, it's just a joke. It's like some serious topics that I like responding to and assume it's about basketball, because that's all I can do in my head, Kyle. I only know basketball.
Were you doing like Houston Rockets?
Yeah.
Like if he would say something about a Rocket, would you make it about James Harden and Daryl Morey?
Exactly.
Okay.
Stuff like that. Or sometimes something totally unrelated. I don't know. Blake Murphy, a great Raptors, really, he does everything in Toronto now, but, I knew him when he started doing Raptors stuff. He responded to one of my tweets recently doing a similar thing. I said the series is over, and he mentioned some hockey teams, and said, is this over? And I said to him, I responded, is it more admirable or sad that I didn't know until last week that the Boston Bruins were having a historic season in the NHL? And the responses to that were very mixed. It was like 50-50, sad, admirable. What do you think, Kyle? Is it more sad or admirable that my head is so deep into basketball that I didn't even know that a sports team from the city that I'm from, that friends talk about, that I didn't even know that the Bruins were having a historic season, most wins, most points, heaviest Stanley Cup favorites ever? Is that sad or admirable? Did you know?
In what world would that be admirable? I don't know. It's either sad or I don't know. Like,
wait, you knew?
What would be virtuous
you
about
knew?
that? I didn't know. No, I didn't. I mean, like, I don't know why would anyone admire that?
Well, because I'm
like,
so focused on my job.
It's either sad or you don't care. Oh, right. Okay. I thought you were making more of a like where you live comment. Man, hockey could not be more off the radar where I live.
I know.
Like it's
especially in Kentucky. You don't have cable.
Well, you twisted that in a way that was plenty of people had cable here. It's just my parents were I don't want to say cheap, but they were just not motivated to pay. We'll say that. that would be they don't. They still don't have
really.
Cable.
They
Mooching
still
off
don't
my
have.
accounts.
They use your account though.
Yeah, they'll surprise me with the stuff they watch. Like we were like eating the other day, and like I was just hanging out with them, and I was like, what have you guys been watching? They were like, The Last of Us. They were like, man, we were disappointed that ended. I was like, what? Like, they just blindsided me with that? I was like, what in the world?
Last of Us was good stuff. Very enjoyable. I very much love that show.
It was over too fast. It felt like it flew by. Like, I don't know.
It did. They could have easily stretched the first game into 2 seasons. I thought it was a mistake doing the first game as the first season.
Interesting. So they could have done it another way.
I wonder if you asked them pressured, like if you put pressure on them, if they would say the same thing. Because I agree. Like,
I think so.
Season 2 has to be 2 seasons. It's too big.
Oh, that's going to be split. They've already said that season 2 is going to be split into multiple seasons. But I mean, you're only going to be able to stretch that game out so far. Like, you can do like maybe 3. 2, I think, is the good split if they're going to do like 9 or 10 episodes.
Just don't make it like The Walking Dead to compare zombie show to zombie show, but just like don't stretch it out too much, because then it dilutes it and turns into something less than it could be.
Oh, it won't. For where the story goes in the second game, it's honestly, it's nothing like Walking Dead, but the story just gets better with what happens in the second game.
Yeah.
And I'm very curious to see how they take it.
I was replaying the second game the other day. Kevin, I assume you haven't played it. That's why you're
I have not, no.
Well,
I only play Call of Duty Warzone. That's all. It's just a dumb first-person shooter player.
No, there's like one thing that is hard on the replay of that game that I'd forgotten about is like the animals involved. Like there are dogs in the second game that like
yeah,
you are
that always
forced to harm. And
Oh, wow.
I can't, like, I got to a section of the game where there's a dog who is with you. We'll just say that. And I was thinking ahead and I was like, I don't remember the dog in this later part of the game. I was like, oh man. I was like, I just don't know. I can't do it. I've become like a total like bleeding heart for like animals on all levels. I just can't do it. So
It's just a game,
know.
Kyle.
It is. The feeling is, I just dread it, man. I can't do it.
Does that make me cold? It's just a video. They're pixels on a screen.
It's true, but it's the essence of a dog is there. Sort of,
dogs
it's
are
a philosophical
also
question.
lovable.
It is true. The other thing is, I'm really close to buying a Switch. I really want one.
If you have friends who have it, I would highly recommend it. And plus, now's the time to get it with the Legend of Zelda coming out. Tears of a Kingdom. So it's the sequel to Breath of the Wild. And Breath of the Wild was amazing.
Never played it.
Are you a big Zelda person?
Not really, but I probably could be. I just never. It was a lane that I never got into, but I could see myself doing it.
It's it's like an open world Zelda. It's nothing like any of the previous Zeldas, but I still enjoyed it. It's a massive, massive game. Like you'll spend hours doing different stuff in that game.
My favorite all-time pet that I've had is the horse in Ocarina of Time.
Epona.
Oh, you mean video game?
Yeah.
pet.
Well,
Okay.
I mean, I've had my real pets were gerbils when I was young. I mean, gerbils are nothing. I used to love riding around Hyrule on my horse and Legend of Zelda Ocarina of Time. No, that was real action. So yes, I changed my take here. It is terrible that those pixelated dogs, you have to do whatever you have to do. They're just as real as anything else.
I'm sorry, I just didn't expect that. I just, I feel like every time we record anything, we just get a little more. We get another little like brush strokes on the canvas of who Kevin is. And have you? I don't think I've ever heard you say you had gerbils when you were growing up. I was just picturing young Kevin, laughing at bullies and going home and taking care of his gerbils. Oh, my babies! I was just
all I do is run on a wheel and smell.
Oh my god! This is a social breakout.
I don't want to disrespect my former gerbils. They were great while we had them, but I always wish we could have had a dog. We just didn't have a house big enough, or probably not enough money either to have a dog. Throughout my childhood, I've never had a dog. I'd love to. Have
I don't
a dog
want
someday.
to disrespect my former gerbils.
That's an all-time quote right there.
Well, thank you for listening to the after the pod.
That was seriously probably the most sincere. I'm like crying a little bit when he said the gerbils thing. I'm like actually the hardest I've ever laughed on the show. You just really surprised me with that. Something about gerbils are just the perfect. Oh boy.